During the spring and summer months of 1999, several accounts of an unusual-looking creature being seen in the Midwestern United States sparked brief interest from local media. Little to no information about the creature was left intact due to the fact that an overwhelmingly large percentage of written accounts, both online and physically written, have been destroyed or lost to time. Those who claim to have seen the creature fervently believe that a powerful organization is trying to keep the creature's existence a secret. In 2003, over 30 written accounts of the creature were uncovered due to a collaborative effort. Some of these written accounts span hundreds of years, and the oldest was written by an Englishman in the year 1534. The group who made this discovery allowed me to use the following written accounts. The script of a play, 1589. The most ghastly of frights hath emerged from its den. It mimics the behold of Sir, and it persuades the brain sick to taketh its deception. It stoodeth above me as I did lie in mine sleep chamber last night of all. For methought it would slayeth me, at which hour it leaned closer. It did look liketh the king, yet it most forsooth wast not he. A journal entry from an English mariner, 1607. We sailed to the new land, and already then I feel as if we should return to England. There was no time to find shelter, so the crew and I slept in the lower deck of the vessel. After waking up at the dead of night, I walked up onto the upper deck to get a breath of fresh air. That was when I saw a man walk out of the forest and onto the sand. I thought he must have been the captain, since he had a long beard and he wore the same hat and garb. But when he walked closer into the moonlight, I noticed that this was no man. It was twisted and mangled, displaying the traits of a horrid mimic. Its skin was as pale as the moon itself, and its eyes were the color of death. After seeing it, I ran back down to the lower deck and locked the door behind me, making sure that this abomination would not find its way in. A great horror lives here, and I wish any and all locals of this land to be safe. I shall inform my shipmates in the morning, for we must leave as soon as we can. A personal letter addressed to one Annie, 1740. Dearest Annie, I write to you from Maryland. It is at my behest that you do not bring the children here. I saw the figure of a woman in the wilderness. I thought it was you at first, but then I saw its face. It is the most terrifying thing I have ever seen. I write this to you now as I hear scratching against the door of my cabin. It is storming now, and I feel as if I may not return home. I regret sailing to the New World. I was foolish to think it would be a paradise. Paradise was destroyed with the arrival of this monster. I pray for your safety, dearest Annie. It spoke your name. A written confession by one Thomas Martin, 1839. Hello, Sheriff. I, Thomas Martin, killed my wife. I did it. I killed her and left her body in Michigan. I told everyone she left for another man. I even feigned depression and stayed at my ranch for over a month. I did every last thing I could in order to feign innocence and escape justice, but alas, if justice cannot take me, that thing will take me instead. It speaks to me in my wife's voice. It mocks me. I do not believe in God, but even then I pray to him every night. I pray only because I know that it comforts me. Just promise me that you will imprison me and keep me safe from the monstrosity that followed me from Michigan. Yes, it followed me. It followed me here. The town is not safe. A soldier's suicide note, 1917. For those I love, this is not your fault. This is no one's fault. I blame nobody but that thing. I cannot go to Europe, but I cannot come home either. It latched onto me like a leech ever since I started living at base, and I fear what it would do if I ever come home. I fear what it would do to my family. I awoke last night to see it standing over my bed. It tried to look like Davis, but I could tell that it was not him. Ever since then, that thing was all I could think about. I hate it. No matter how hard I try to forget about it, it still stays. Every time I close my eyes, I see its face. God, its face is horrible. I cannot go to sleep. I fear that I'll wake up to see it again. I'm sorry. Goodbye. The same soldier wrote another note, addressed to his fellow soldier, one Davis. Davis, I'm sorry I have to do this. This isn't your fault, but please do one thing for me and don't forget it. If you see something wearing your uniform, shoot it until it is dead. It's trying to look like you. A portion of a novel written by an unidentified author using the pseudonym Catherine Olson, 1949. The local children kept mentioning Mr. Twist. I thought nothing of it. I thought it was only a ghost story, yet I remember a night when I was young like them and I saw something I could not explain. I remember seeing a strange-looking man in my room, clinging to the corner of the wall, his head and back against the ceiling. He was just there, 8 feet from the ground, completely still. He looked familiar and he wore familiar clothes, but I couldn't put my finger on who he was trying to imitate. His wide cartoon of a smile looked as if it was being pulled by invisible strings, and his eyes were black and soulless. He didn't do anything, but even then his mere presence was mortifying. Sometimes even now I lay awake at night fearing that I'll see him again. Sometimes I still feel like a young defenseless child, even as a grown woman living in a new house, in a new state, with a husband and children of my own. I still feel like I will one day become a victim of him. A woman's journal entry, 1965. Last night I got out of bed to check on the children. Then I saw him. He was a white man staring at my children through the bedroom window. He was no ordinary man, though. He wasn't white like white folk. He was white like the moon at night, and he wore the grin of the devil on his face. I managed to scare him off when I walked into the room. My children slept in my bed for the rest of the night. I don't want to tell them about the white man. The final entry in a young girl's diary, 1981. Dear Diary, I saw the scary monster again. It's trying to look like Daddy. A teenage boy's journal entry, 1989. Every time I ask Mom to put blinds in my room, she keeps saying, no, you're just gonna block out the sunlight. You need sunlight. I just wish you could understand what I'm going through. It would be so much easier to sleep knowing that it can't look at me. This boy was identified as Tyler McCullough, who was 13 years old at the time this entry was written. He was given this journal in order to express his feelings while going through a brutal wave of depression. Soon after writing this entry, he attempted suicide. He failed and was sent to a local hospital. Tyler mysteriously died while in the ER, despite the fact that he was making a steady recovery. Nobody was in the room at the time. A college student's post to an online message board, 1996. Hey guys, college freshman here. I just moved into my dorm and I've been seeing some weird shit go down at night. I wonder if you guys would know what to do about it. I'm a night owl, meanwhile my roommate sleeps like a log all night every night. I haven't told him about this, but I might as well tell you guys since you won't think I'm crazy, hopefully. So I've been seeing this weird looking thing just staring at me through my window. It looks like a person, but it isn't a person. It's pretty damn obvious that this thing isn't a person. Its limbs are long and twisted, same with its neck. My dorm is also on the 3rd floor, so that aspect makes this situation 10 times worse. That's not the worst part, though. The worst part is that it's trying to look like my girlfriend. A transcript of an interview with an eyewitness, 1997. It looked crooked. It had this long, twisted neck that was around the same length as my arm. Hearing it walk sounded like someone breaking celery sticks. I know damn well that noise came from its bones. Its arms hung down past its knees, and its hands were disfigured beyond belief. Nearly half of its fingers were bent backwards like they were broken. It wore the clothes of my father. It wore his favorite blue and white plaid shirt, and it wore his denim overalls. Its hair was gray like his, and it wore the same fishing cap he did. It made me feel sick. A police report, 1998. On the 21st of February 1998 at 0210 hours, I was dispatched to 108 Preston Road in reference to an attempted breaking and entering. The occupants of this household are James and Abigail Buchanan, a newlywed couple, both 25 years of age. Mrs. Buchanan described seeing what appeared to be a Caucasian male with a facial deformity standing outside of her bedroom window, attempting to open it. She described him as twisted, emphasizing the length of the man's neck, calling it impossibly long and crooked. I asked Mr. Buchanan if he saw the man as well. He confirmed that he did indeed see the suspect, but instead of seeing the suspect at the window, Mr. Buchanan saw him standing in the backyard of the property, staring into the house from the sliding glass door. Mr. Buchanan described the suspect as an impersonation of a man, fervently insisting that the suspect was not human. It wasn't a costume, Mr. Buchanan told me. Its proportions were not those of a human being. They were more like those of a mangled corpse. It was almost as if this thing was pretending to be human, but it wasn't convincing at all. The suspect is a Caucasian male with brown hair. He has a facial deformity, and he's described to have a long, slanted neck. The suspect is described to have stood in a crooked posture in which one shoulder was higher than the other. The suspect likely has scoliosis or another similar condition. He is described to have worn a dark blue overcoat jacket and a white button-down undershirt. He is also described to have worn black dress pants and black dress shoes. According to Mr. and Mrs. Buchanan, the suspect's movements were completely unnatural. "Do you know what the uncanny valley is?" Mrs. Buchanan asked me. Because that's what he looked like. I saw the uncanny valley outside my window. It didn't have humanity in its eyes, only darkness. We took this comment into consideration. After seeing both Mr. and Mrs. Buchanan's eyewitness sketches, it is apparent that the suspect is extremely deformed, possibly suffering from an unknown condition. The suspect has not yet been apprehended. The rest of the entries shown below were written by the same police officer who wrote the report above. He has been identified as Quentin Moore, who was 36 years old at the time these entries were written. Entry 1, 1998. February 24th, 1998. Earlier tonight I woke up so I could go out on the porch and have a smoke. I saw it. I saw the thing the Buchanans described to me, and I wish I didn't. At that moment I figured out why that poor couple kept calling our suspect it. The thing stood underneath a lamppost which barely shielded it from the heavy rain. Even then the bastard didn't care how soaked it got. It just stared at me as I smoked, and I stared right back at it. It tried to look like the chief. It wore his exact attire down to every last detail. It had his uniform, his hat, his badge, and it even wore his holster, which wasn't empty. It didn't reach for its firearm, however. Instead, it just stood there, still looking at me. It kept piercing my soul with its black, monstrous eyes. An eerie grin stretched across its malformed face. and it was uncomfortable for me to look at. But I was afraid of what would happen if I looked away, so I kept staring at it. The thing didn't move, it just kept standing still like a statue. Even then, I felt as if it was getting closer to me, slow and methodical. It wasn't moving, however. It still stood underneath the lamppost. After what felt like forever, it spoke to me.
What's wrong?
You look like you've just seen a ghost. First it sounded like the chief, and then it sounded like my wife. Even then, no matter how convincing its voice was, there was always something off about how it spoke. It didn't speak like a person. Between every few words, it would pause and adjust the pitch of its voice, almost as if it struggled to speak. I didn't want to respond, but instinct took over. What the hell are you? I'm Maria. Hearing it say my wife's name made a chill run through my body. What do you want? It didn't respond. Instead, it collapsed onto the ground with a loud cracking sound. Then it twisted its neck to look up at me, now on all fours with its stomach close to the ground. It let out a raspy growl before scurrying backwards into the woods. I stood outside for at least 5 more minutes, staring out into the forest. I expected it to come back, but it didn't. I'm inside now, in the bedroom that my wife and I sleep in. I take glances at my wife as I write this. I'm going to pray for her. Entry 2, 1998. February 28th, 1998. The clock just struck midnight. I'm in the bedroom again, writing this at my desk. I think it's back. I was hoping it didn't return, but I have this lingering feeling like something terrible was going to happen. It's raining again. I know that because I hear it. I had a thought just now. I visualized it standing on my porch waiting for me to answer the door, not in the chief's clothes, but in my wife's. I visualized it with her hair, her makeup, her lipstick. I feel like I'm going to vomit. I just heard a noise from above me, almost as if the thing was crawling around on my roof. I'm so glad I made sure to pull the blinds over the windows earlier tonight. I'm so glad it can't see us. Entry 3, 1998. March 5th, 1998. I'm in my patrol car parked outside of someone's house. We got a call from a woman who was adamantly convinced that her ex-boyfriend, who she has a restraining order on, was standing on her front porch, knocking on the door. She told me she didn't see him, but she heard his voice, so she knew that the person on her porch was him. He isn't on the property now, or at least I don't think he is. Right as I was about to call dispatch, I saw it. It stood across the street in between 2 houses. It was barely visible, but it was there. I knew it was there. I stared at it for what felt like minutes, even though it was probably only a few seconds. It wore a different outfit this time. A t-shirt with baggy sweatpants and a pair of black sneakers. It wore a beanie on its head, and its hair was just as dark as its clothes, being stringy and black. Its hair didn't even reach halfway down its neck. However, on a human, it would be shoulder length. I thought about the man she described, Caucasian with a large nose and long black hair. The creature's impersonation perfectly fit the woman's description of her ex-boyfriend. It even wore the same earring he did, as well as the same piercing on its bottom lip. Before I knew it, the thing was on my side of the road. It stood on the woman's porch. I wanted to grab my gun, but I knew damn well that bullets won't even make this thing flinch. It was hellish, otherworldly. It was a being beyond comprehension. I knew that shooting it would only piss it off. Every time I look down to write in my journal, I'm afraid that it'll make a move before I look back up. It just knocked on the woman's front door. It said something, but I didn't hear it. I decided to roll down my window just a crack so I could listen to it speak. He's gone, it spoke. You're safe now. I nearly screamed when I heard it speak. It spoke with my voice. I can't look at it anymore. It makes me sick to my stomach. I decided to roll the window up again and call for backup just now. I don't want to die in this car, but if I do, I need to keep writing before it takes me. I can't just disappear without a reason. I can't just be another missing person. I need people to know what happened to me. I need people to know that this thing exists. I need to expose the Torsion. If I die, this journal must be recovered. The next 2 pages consist of writing that is mostly unintelligible. The only legible phrase was written on the lower half of the 2nd page. It got into her house. It is believed that Quentin had a manic episode of some sort while in his car. Entry for 1998. March 11th, 1998. I woke up earlier tonight to hear Death knocking on the front door. I opened my eyes to see Maria's terrified face. "Honey," she spoke, "there's something bad standing on the porch. It wants to come in." I then remembered that I never told her about the creature. I asked her, "Did you speak to it?" She shook her head side to side as her beautiful auburn curls waved around. "Good," I responded. "Did it see you?" Her answer was interrupted by a loud bang against the front door. After that, we both stayed silent for over a minute, too afraid to even move. I then felt a cold breeze enter the bedroom. "Hide," I whispered. Maria quietly got out of bed and hid in the closet. I stood up and slowly walked towards the hallway, stopping only inches away from the bedroom door. I opened it only slightly before peeking into the hallway. I expected to see it standing still on the porch, with the front door now broken open. However, what I saw was much more terrifying. I saw its face, only a few inches from mine. Its grotesque smile was more bone-chilling than ever. I recoiled and jumped backwards, causing my back to hit the wall. I expected the thing to rip the bedroom door right off of its hinges, but instead, the monster slowly pulled it open, not even making a sound. It then shambled into the bedroom, staring at me the whole time. Its face was mere inches from mine once more. I expected to feel the hot breath of a dog, but I didn't feel any breath at all. It was almost as if this thing was a walking corpse. "What do you want?" I finally managed to ask. "Maria," it replied in a cold, heartless demeanor. My legs gave out as I slowly slid down the wall. It turned to look at the closet. Both the closet door and the bedroom window were open. Maria escaped. I then smiled. "You're never gonna have her, you son of a bitch." I expected its expression to change. I expected it to become angry. I expected it to grind its teeth together and furrow its eyebrows, but it didn't. Instead, it just stayed still, smiling at me. After a moment, it spoke again. This time, its voice was different. It almost seemed sad. "Oh, so much time, so much pain. For what? I'm forever horrible secret. I belong to the woods out there, alone, the outsider of humanity." It kept pausing as it spoke. "Do you believe in monsters, Quentin?" "Yes. They're real, Quentin. They're very real." Both the creature and I stayed silent for what felt like hours. "Excuse me. I'll be right back. I need to talk to your wife." It suddenly turned and scurried out the window. I rushed out of the house, still barefoot, as rain started to pour on my head and back. I stood in the middle of the road, looking around for both the creature and Maria. I then heard a noise from underneath my wife's car. I looked over to see her crawling out from underneath it. "It ran down the road," she said, standing up and running over to me. "Let's go inside. We need to go inside, quickly." She grabbed my hand and led me into the house. I tried closing the front door, but it was broken open. "We can't stay here," I spoke. "We need to drive somewhere far away." And so that was what we did. We drove for over an hour. Maria and I decided to stay over at a motel for the night. I'm writing this now since I can't sleep. I don't think I could ever fall asleep again after seeing its face so close to mine. Entry 5, 1998. March 12th, 1998. Earlier tonight, I woke up to feel a cold breeze. I opened my eyes to see it standing over my wife and I as we laid down in bed. I could only stare at it. It spoke once more. "You will never forget
me."
I then heard my wife scream. I looked at her as it suddenly reached for her and grabbed her throat. It then stood up straight, still holding Maria's neck. I got up from the bed and tried to fight it, but it stayed still. No matter what I did, I punched it, I kicked it, I screamed at the top of my lungs, but the thing didn't acknowledge me. It only acknowledged my wife, who was also fighting back, but she simply couldn't hit it. Its arm was too long. I kept wailing on the bastard over and over. I finally triggered a response from it after punching it in the throat. It suddenly snapped its head over to look at me before grabbing me by the neck and throwing me across the room. My head and back hit the wall before I fell onto the floor, landing on my stomach. The bastard slowly steered its head away from me, now looking at my wife. She finally stopped flailing. "I love you, quit," she wheezed. I saw the thing's eyes start to bleed. They then slowly started protruding from their sockets, attached to long, fleshy stalks. All I could do was scream the word no over and over, but the thing still didn't acknowledge me. It then opened its mouth as a long tube of meat slithered out from deep within. My wife then swung her arm at the thing as hard as she could. However, before she could land a punch, it grabbed her wrist. It then snapped her arm like a twig. My wife screamed and cried, pleading with the thing to spare her. She stopped talking when the front end of the meaty tube attached itself to her face like a suction cup. Long, jagged teeth emerged from the outer rim of the tube and hooked into the sides of her head. It let go of her neck and grabbed the sides of her torso with both hands. I finally managed to stand up as my wife started violently seizing. The moment I started limping over to the creature, it used the tube to pull Maria's head into its mouth before biting down onto her neck. I gasped and fell to my knees. It dropped my wife. Her headless corpse fell to the floor. Its eyes then sunk back into their sockets. It looked at me. Its face was painted red with her blood. The love of my life laid still on the ground. I didn't have the privilege to see her beautiful face anymore. All I could do at that moment was scream. But now, I'm silent. This is my final entry. I can't take it anymore. The sun is going to rise soon. I'm sitting in the parking lot. I feel as if hours had passed. But it happened less than 15 minutes ago. I only know that because of my watch. I can only sit and wait now. I'm waiting for it to return. I'm waiting to see it walk out of the darkness, still stained with the blood of my wife. I'm waiting for my turn. It's inevitable. I just know it. It'll have me just like it has the love of my life. The Torsion has already attached itself to me, and it will never let me go. I watched her die. It's ironic. My job is to serve and protect. But I can't protect anyone anymore.